Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, of course, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Colin.
Hey Matt, lovely to see you. So on today's show, we're going through a catalogue of old movies that we missed during the year 2020. These kind of like Oscar, Golden Globe type movies that are going to be up for hopefully a lot of awards because they are very, very good. I'd imagine we'll probably do more of these as well, guys, for other 2020 movies we missed. But for today's episode, I'll pass over to Callum to explain what three films we're going to be talking about. So yeah, off to you, mate.
So as Matthew has said, we don't normally pay too much attention to these sort of, big like Oscar bait kind of films. The real awards contenders. We're more about, because when you want to spend your hard-earned money or money given to you by your parents because you're under 18, you want to spend that money wisely, and you
Yeah.
you want to spend it on a movie you actually want to see. And sometimes, with these movies, you hear that they're high quality, great, and then you watch them and you're thoroughly unentertained because it's the critics' choice kind of film.
Mhm.
I always sort of point to Lincoln when I'm talking about that, because it sounds like it's a 3 hour bore fest, but the critics, were in love with it. But here, we're seeing as we have a lot more time spent at home. As Matthew said, we're going through a few of them. The Oscar nominations are out on Monday. I imagine, whatever's nominated for Best Picture, we're going to work our way through those as well. But today we will be talking about three films, as Matthew said, from 2020. We'll be talking about Emma, One Night in Miami, and Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yeah, so a really, really solid slate of three films today, and really looking forward to
Well,
getting
two,
those.
two in your
Two,
opinion.
in my opinion, yeah, it's a bit of a voices scenario from our voices podcast. But yeah, two of these I really, really like. And hopefully I think all of them will be nominated for at least one category in the Oscars. But yeah, just before we kick off today's episode, thank you very much for everyone who supported us recently. I know Callum and I really do appreciate that massively. And yeah, as always, time codes for the movies if you want to skip to a movie you like, or email for any podcast suggestions or questions, moviematespodcast@gmail.com is always in the description. So off podcast we talked about chronological order. So you had said the first one was Emma, didn't you, mate?
Yes.
Lovely. So if you want
I
to open the
don't think that
floor.
this will necessarily be a voices situation because I don't think I'm going to threaten to beat you up because you don't like Emma.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe got off lightly there with the voices, but yeah, this film is probably the most different of the three, isn't it?
hmm
Hmm.
You know, I think if we want to talk broadly about the genre that it sits in, it's historical period costume drama, and very very much not my thing. I would say the only one that sort of slipped through the cracks, within recent years is Bridgerton, the Netflix show. But when it comes to most of this stuff, I really don't get the fascination with watching like intolerable rich people enjoying their lives. It's like
Yeah,
old timey Real Housewives or
yeah,
Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Downton Abbey just seems like, I mean, it
hell on
seems
earth.
dreadful. I'm not gonna lie.
It does. It absolutely does. I think the only real film or even TV show in that genre I kind of liked was Inspector Calls, which is very, very different from the classic sort of Emma or Downton Abbey type, but it was very good. Obviously, we had done that for English GCSE. But yeah, I think this genre is one of those. It's a classic British film, isn't it? Like it's one of those where
Mhm.
the 50-year-olds and up will absolutely love it. You know what I mean? The Downton Abbey viewers will love this type of film, and there are good spots in it. I mean, the performances are amazing, aren't they? To be honest, absolutely
Yeah,
incredible.
I find it a really fun who's who of so some of the greatest British actors. You're like, oh shit, that's Bill Nye.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then of
absolutely.
course, one of my favorite actors of recent years, Johnny Flynn, is within the film playing
He's
Mr.
great.
Knightley, and I just feel his presence elevates everything he's in, and I think Hollywood is finally starting to take notice of him because recently he's been in uh Stardust. For a second, I forgot what that film was even called. He's been in Stardust, this film, and The Dig. Three films that have gotten a lot of attention. Even if Stardust's attention was not necessarily positive, he's had a lot of attention on him, and I think we're going to see him, really break out sometime soon.
Yeah, oh for sure, he's absolutely great here, and I actually think he'd be a really good. I can't remember if you had maybe suggest this, maybe to plant the seed in my head for this thought, but I kind of thought he'd be a very good Wolverine. He's definitely got
Hmm.
the beard, the facial hair on point here, and I kind of feel like even though he's not Canadian or American, I still think he'd be an absolutely spot on choice. After all, Hugh Jackman wasn't from either of those countries. He's a native Aussie, so I mean I think he'd be a really, really good shot. I just get there's vibes, and I think he's a very versatile actor as well, as seen here. Like, it's a very different character from David Bowie in Stardust, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I feel like anything I've ever seen Johnny Flynn in, he's always been sort of this sweet, emotional character. I haven't seen him sort of play rage. So I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I imagine, he must be capable because he's a fantastic actor. But it's not a side of him I've seen. So I mean, I definitely welcome that.
Yeah, I think he's good. And I think one of the best actors, or the most underrated actor in the last couple of years, is definitely Anya Taylor-Joy for me. I think she's absolutely amazing. I think the first film I had seen her in was Split, and she's fantastic there. And obviously in Glass, even though it was a bit of a downgrade from Split, I think she's very good there. And of course, we reviewed New Mutants a few months ago, and she was a highlight for me. So I think she's absolutely remarkable here as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think with her recent Golden Globe win for The Queen's Gambit, I think there's going to be a lot of attention on her in the next few years, and
Definitely.
can completely deserved.
For
I
sure.
think she's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, a million percent, a million percent.
And
Yeah.
this film is only set 200 years ago, but it feels like a different universe. And
It does,
I was
yeah.
just wondering as I was watching it, 200 years from now, do you think people look back on our society, as though it's a different universe?
Yeah, I mean, when I watched this film, I would have thought it was like in the 1600s by the looks of things. Everything's so different. It is like there's candlelit dinners, obviously no electricity during the 1800s. And yeah, I mean, I think people will probably look back now, and sort of think, oh, look at those chumps, doing podcasts over Zoom calls or whatever, those kind of things. But I think, I don't know. It goes back to the sort of the Back to the Future dynamic, where I'm sure a lot of people in the 80s probably thought, yeah, hoverboards probably will exist in 2015. You know what I mean? But then 2015 is not that different from 1984, 1985, really, is it? So I think it's one of those things where human evolution probably hasn't went at the speed I thought it would. That, to be honest, when I look back, 2021 feels exactly the same as the year 2007 did for me. Really, there's no real big technological advancements. Obviously, internet's great, mobile phones are great, but apart from that, life just feels the same. What about you?
Yeah, I think that there will be movements towards we've obviously seen a massive difference in sort of elitism, because all of
Yeah,
these films that are set 200 years ago are all about rich white people. There's no other story told about characters 200 years ago. That seems to be the kind of story people like to see told, and I don't really understand that.
yeah,
But I think that's probably the biggest point of difference that you can notice. Aside from the technology, I think when it comes to cinema and the representation of these times right now, no one really wants to watch a film about rich people enjoying their lives.
yeah.
Like
It's not
no
relatable.
one would want to go to the cinema and watch a family in 2021 who are rich and white, just enjoying their money and finding love, because
Yeah,
that's not representative of the 99%.
yeah.
So I think that is probably the biggest difference I would notice, and I'd like to think that years down the line that things are even better in regards to that.
Spot on. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that if a film, if it was to be in, like you said, like a 2021 sort of drama with this rich white family, that's not the main archetypal family anymore, and it hasn't been that way for decades. Do you know what I mean? And I hope it never gets to that stage again where it's so elitist, and obviously society's still quite elitist at the minute. When I was watching films like One Night in Miami and Trial of Chicago 7, I'm just like, things haven't really changed, and that's just sad. Like, obviously it's things have changed here and there, but overall there's still the overarching discrimination still apparent. Like, and I don't want to go too much into it, obviously, because we're just a couple of teens, film obsessed teens that just watch movies. But I don't know. I think society maybe hasn't changed as much as I thought it would or would want it to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, I suppose with technological advancement, where there are elites here, they actually have more power, because they're in control of,
Mm, yeah,
oil and technology. Whereas here, you just had enough money to, have a big, a big dinner spread, I guess, and then
yeah.
just bully other people for not having as much money. So
Hmm.
they had more, there was more people with more money. So I suppose that is still a more even spread of wealth. But it is
Yeah,
it. I suppose just my point of confusion is why people would find escapism in watching something like this.
yeah,
I really enjoyed this film, but as a genre, I mean, I don't mean as one film you might enjoy. I happened to like Bridgerton. I enjoyed this film. But, you know, I couldn't sit down and watch Downton Abbey like that. That would honestly be
Yeah, it's
dreadful. Like I
yeah.
don't know why people are like, yeah, you know, I live, you know, a pretty modest lifestyle. I'm gonna go sit down and watch people enjoy their lives more than I do. Like
Mm.
I don't really get that.
Yeah, it's not relatable, isn't it? It sure isn't. And also, you know, I think I was saying society has moved past that kind of archetypal dynamic a little bit. And yeah, just nothing could be further away from my ideal cinema experience than like a, you know, a Downton Abbey film or something like that. I know they did make one of those, but like that is like that would be the furthest down on my list of movies to watch. Do you know what I mean? It's just not for me. Not for me, Clive. Not for
Next
me.
week on the Movie Mates channel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't imagine. God, our friendship might have to come to an end if that happened. But
For the third or fourth time, according to
yeah,
your descriptions.
yeah, I know. Yeah, you caught that, did you? But yeah, one thing I think that's really good in this film is like just the dynamics between the characters. Obviously, we mentioned Johnny Flynn as Mr. Knightley and Anya Taylor-Joy as of course the titular character, Emma Woodhouse. But I think Bill Nye is a standout here as well as her dad. He's just a delight in everything that we watch. He's
Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't get very much play, and his character doesn't have a lot of depth. But you know, again, you know, elevates anything he's in, as you said.
of course, mate.
And you know, all these, you know, films that are set in, you know, sort of the Regency era, you know, costume drama kind of stuff. You know, really the central theme is love, because you know you can't focus on, you know, certain issues that people didn't care about at the time. You know, you don't have issues of technology or anything. You know, you can't do sci-fi set in 1800.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're doing a, you know, a sort of,
Doctor Who,
you know,
or something like
yeah,
that.
you know, if you're doing like a steampunk spin on time, you know, if you're trying to
Yeah,
accurately capture the time, you know, that's not going to work.
yeah,
But you know, like love seems to be the central theme of most of these films. And you know, within these projects, people, you know, from the time seem to be pretty much devoid of personality. So like it's kind of a wonder of how anybody falls in love or stands each other, or you know, at the time without any, you know, technological distraction.
yeah.
You know, it just confused me, you know, how anybody falls in love when you have nothing going on. Like,
Yeah. You'd also
you know,
imagine. Go ahead, mate.
you know, your daily excitement would be like, you know, going for a walk.
Yeah, you'd also imagine like the pool of people that you'll come across in your life in this scenario would be very, very small. So the likelihood that you meet someone who's very similar to you that you get on well with and you have a romantic spark would be very, very slim. I mean, we see it here. There's a lot of relationships in this film that don't work out, or there's characters who have ulterior motives as to they kind of want to marry this person but settle for this person kind of thing. And obviously, Emma is sort of a character who feels like she needs to set people up, so to speak. She's like an 1800s dating app, you know what I mean? That's kind of what she is in this film. But yeah, I kind of feel like you're right. The entertainment would be going on a horse ride or something, which I'd imagine be quite monotonous given that that's all there is to do, you'd think. But I mean, yeah, I just go back. Yeah, I don't think I could live in the 1800s where there's just no electricity, and that's such a cliche sort of millennial thing to say or whatever generation we are. But yeah, I just think I don't know what I'd do without just technology in general, mate. I'm addicted to it, to be honest with you. Just podcasts, music. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the time you don't know any better, but yeah, if you
That's
were
true.
if you had all that stuff stripped away from you, it would be
Yeah,
tragic.
that would be absolutely tragic, mate. Even when the electricity goes off in our house from time to time, like that's bad enough for 5 or 10 minutes. You're just like, what do I do now? But I can't imagine. I suppose you're right. You don't really know what you have until it's gone. And here, they never really had it, so they probably don't know any better.
Mm. And you know, if we want to quickly mention the character of Emma, because I don't think either of us have too much further to say on the
Yeah.
film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think this character kind of you know, balances being seemingly very smart and very ignorant. You know, she's very surprised, you know, and shocked that Mr. Elton, you know, has affection towards her. You know, and you know, I suppose it's open to interpretation. You know, whether her personality is pleasant or unpleasant, but you know, at least she has a
At least she has a
personality. You know,
personality, yeah.
she seems surprised that, you know, people are attracted to other people, but I mean, you know, I don't think she should be surprised that, you know, people are you know, interested in her, because you know she's one of the few that have something interesting to say.
Yeah, the rest kind of seem like, without being too harsh, like they do feel like just robots, or they're like aliens acting how they think humans acted at the time. That's how I like it. Like the performances are good. Like I definitely do think that's intentional. You know what I mean? But I think you're right. I think Emma although a bit of a controversial, divisive character, I think she is one of the few with a good personality, along with obviously Mr. Woodhouse and Mr. Knightley. All the Misters and Misses, I got so confused in this film as to who was who. I got to be honest with you, I had to go on Wikipedia just to confirm that Johnny Flynn was Mr. Knightley and vice versa. You know what I mean? It was a tough watch. There's so many characters here as well to balance, but they did a good job. They did a good job.
And also, whenever I was reading the sort of brief summary of it, before I started to watch it, it referred to Mr. Knightley as her brother-in-law, which I thought meant that it was her sister's husband. So I was like, she trying to fuck her sister's husband?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I forget that you're. I mean, it seems too far a connection to call that your brother-in-law if it's your sister's husband's brother. Like, it feels like that's her
Too
brother-in-law,
distant.
but not yours. Like,
Yeah.
it feels a bit far.
It
I
does.
don't
No,
know.
absolutely does. Yeah, no, I get you. Like, I think obviously this film, I think it's based on or it is a Jane Austen novel, isn't it? From
Mhm.
the time. I actually don't know much about Jane Austen to be honest with you, mate. But from our old English teacher, I know he was a big fan of her work. So I think I, it's the only thing I'd say about this film. It wouldn't exactly inspire me to go read up other literature. That's the only thing. It didn't really do enough for me to sort of be invested. That sounds really harsh. I did like it. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like a a Voices scenario where like it was severely worse for me than the other films here. I think it definitely deserves to sort of be in the conversation, but I think I don't know. It didn't do enough for me to kind of motivate me to check out our other work. I know that's a bit of a weird opinion, I'd imagine, but yeah, it's just how I felt, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Fairly few things would probably encourage me to read these days. To be fair,
Yeah,
yeah,
same. I haven't read a book in ages.
put that in my past, unfortunately. But
Same.
when it came to the central romance within the film, which is between Emma and Mr. Knightley, by the end of the film, we see very clearly, even before Emma does, that Harriet and Mr. Harriet is clearly in love with Mr. Knightley, and I thought that there maybe some kind of subversion there, where they actually ended up together, and I thought, wow, that excuse me.
You're
I
right.
thought, wow, that would be sort of a fresh way to take it. But they go against that, and in all honesty, I'm quite glad, because
Yeah,
I
no,
just think that the chemistry between Johnny Flynn and Anya Taylor-Joy was just undeniable.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I would use, mate. It was undeniable. It was clear as day, and I think that the ending is quite heartwarming. You know what I mean. It's Bill Nye, of course, is a really bright spark there, and it's nice because obviously, I think Anya Taylor-Joy and Johnny Flynn have fantastic chemistry, and yeah, I think the ending was a bit cliche, but I'm glad for the sake of my own enjoyment of the film and the narrative it had. I'm glad they ended up together because I think it's what I would have wanted. I think it made more sense for me for them to end up together than Harriet and Mr. Knightley. I think.
Do you have anything further on the film, Matthew?
I don't, mate. I don't. I kind of bottled making notes in this one, dude. I was really struggling. I was really
It was
struggling.
difficult.
It was difficult, but I'd love to hear your rating for it, Callum.
Well, I would probably give this film, there is usually more humming and hawing about it, but I do honestly think there isn't much to say here. I found it sort of difficult to start. I had to push myself to put it on,
Mm-hmm.
and at times I found it hard to follow because of the era appropriate dialogue. I sort of struggled with at points, but in all honesty, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think it was, you know sort of period drama in the way that I'm used to. I mean, we've just taken a shit on Downton Abbey. Let's be honest. But those are, you know, I feel like that is an elitist tale of like rich people, but here sort of wealth and wealth isn't really a factor here. Where they're sort of rubbing it in their face, or rub it in fuck's sake, rubbing it rubbing it in the
Long day.
face of other people that that they have more money than them. That doesn't seem to be sort of a central theme or factor here. So I think that's maybe where I can sort of see more enjoyment here than I would in any other kind of costume period drama.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed the film a lot more than I thought I would. I think in comparison to the other two films that they were talking about today, of course it pales in comparison, but I would probably give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there, Cal, to be honest with you, man. I think maybe the closest modern interpretation of this kind of genre is with maybe The Crown. I know the royal family's been in the news a lot recently, but I think The Crown is one of those shows where it balances that sort of elitist nature with that kind of like the soap opera style narrative like Downton Abbey, but I think I can see why people would enjoy that show because it is more relevant, even today than Downton Abbey would be. I know I've just taken a huge shit in Downton Abbey today, but I don't apologize for it. I've never watched an episode of it, but it's just not for me, Clive. But yeah, I think for me, this movie, great performances, great cast. Miranda Hart is in here as well, which I forgot to mention. She's actually very good. So yeah, I'll probably have to give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, I think it's a decent watch. One film that we said off podcast today that we really enjoyed is One Night in Miami, which blew my mind. Actually, is directed by Regina King, which is amazing. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, man. I think if she has a couple more great films in her locker, she has to go down as one of the goats. I really gotta be honest.
Yeah.
Acting and directing wise, she's flawless in everything, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had the chance to see Nomadland yet, but I don't know how it could be more impressive than this film, because Chloe Zhao won for best director at the Golden Globes for Nomadland. I just can't imagine it topping this. We'll have to give it a watch, but I suppose we'll see.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, this film is like it's not what I expected it to be at all. I expected it to be quite not dull, but quite sort of serious, quite kind of quite a tough watch. But it's anything but that. It's entertaining. It's thought provoking. It's just everything you'd want from this kind of film. It's so good. It's unreal.
Yeah,
it's so good.
I agree. I thought when I heard the concept of all these important figures come together to have this discussion, I sort of pictured it in the style of Matt Rooney's Black Bottom, where it was sort of contained to this one room, limited to sort of the time constraints of the runtime. I thought it would be a discussion over 2 hours in one room between all these important men, and I'm really glad it wasn't limited to that sort of trope, because I just don't know if the runtimes could have allowed it to maintain the momentum that it actually manages.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think here, this is one of the best scripts ever for me. I think the script is absolutely amazing. I gotta be honest with you, man. The only two characters in the film that I'd actually heard of were Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. I hadn't heard of Jim Brown or Sam Cooke, but I'm definitely glad that I know now. Sam Cooke. I put on a few of his songs afterwards, and he's great. He's so good. And obviously one of your favorites, Bob Dylan, gets a wee mention in here, which I'm sure you were happy about.
Yeah, I would say Jim Brown's the only one that I wasn't familiar with. But yeah, definitely did love hearing some of my favorite music within the film. Although it was a version of "Blowing in the Wind" that I'm not used to. I think.
Oh really?
I think that's the single version, but I think the album version is different. So it was one that I was sort of taken aback by. But I love seeing these guys so much.
Yeah, definitely,
and
mate.
if we want to talk about sort of the opening of the film, the central figure in this film, I would say, is probably Malcolm X. But the character we actually open with is Muhammad Ali, and he's having this boxing match. I don't know. I don't know the sport.
Match or fight, either or.
Yeah. So he has his fight, and in all honesty, I would have liked to see Muhammad Ali have a victory. Because this is sort of a character establishing scene. But thankfully, later, when he wins the championship title, we get to see his talent. But here, when you're establishing the character, I would have liked to see. I mean, it's cut off before we actually see who the victor is. But it seems that he's sort of down for the count in that.
I kind of thought that was maybe the one point of the film I was like, that's quite strange, because looking on his boxing record, he actually won that fight, so which is quite strange. Right. So he went on to win it because the other guy was cut above the eyebrow, so the ref had to stop it. So I thought it was quite
weird how they played that then.
It is, because you'd think because it's a fictional meeting of the character, you'd think you could just pick a match where Ali loses, couldn't you? It's a bit weird, but yeah, one thing about Muhammad Ali, it's Mad Dog. It's Mad Dog for Riverdale, mate. He's so good.
That's the actor.
That's Mad Dog, mate. That's bloody Mad Dog.
Is it?
I'm telling you, mate. That's him.
Did you look it up, or is this just your?
No. I looked. I thought that looks a bit like Mad Dog, and I looked it up, and it was.
Because I was like, I do vaguely recognize this guy, but I did not make that connection. But I mean, that's presumably why I loved him so much.
Dude, he's actually a great actor. Like, Riverdale doesn't get to showcase it a lot. He's got a really great sort of Southern accent, Muhammad Ali style, and he's actually just amazing. It really impressed me here. Really, really impressed me.
And he's but one amongst this ensemble of four great figures within history. And I think this ensemble, because of their unique and diverse talents, it managed to create this sort of really incredibly compelling narrative, because it sort of allowed this melting pot of genres. Because the film
Definitely,
opens,
mate.
and then part way through, we see Muhammad Ali, involved in boxing. So even within the film, it's a sports film, it's a musical. Just because of Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali, and that's not even to taking into account the activism of Malcolm X. We don't really actually get to see too much of Jim Brown. I would say he's probably the character who gets the least amount of play within the film. But it was amazing how they were able to balance these genres, and I think that's what kept it interesting. Because
Absolutely,
had
mate.
it been this just meeting of minds, I think it would have been, you could have had an incredible script there, incredible direction, but it wouldn't have been as engaging as they managed to make it here.
1,000,000%, man. I agree completely. I think I'm glad that most of the characters, apart from Jim Brown, kind of have a backstory to them in which it's shown. I think Jim Brown, a little bit, it gets a little bit neglected at the start, but then when the more and more you learn about him, he's trying to become an actor as well once his NFL career concludes. But yeah, I think you're really spot on there. I mean, one thing I just love about these cast of four is that they're all so different, but they're all sort of like they're classic sort of they're like the best in their own fields. Malcolm X is sort of this really well-known political activist who's doing a lot for you know Muslims and Americans, things like that. And obviously Muhammad Ali, I mean, greatest boxer of all time. Sam Cooke, one of the kings of soul and R&B, and obviously Jim Brown, one of the best NFL players of all time. So I just love how each of them are sort of they're the best in their own fields, and they all have to come together and have sort of this really human discussion about why it's important that they represent people. I think the whole dynamic, the whole sort of conflict between Malcolm X and Sam Cooke is interesting because on the one hand, you can kind of see from both angles. Sam Cooke, he wants to be successful, and sort of from his angle, he kind of believes that his success alone will kind of inspire Black people to sort of aspire high. But then you can also see Malcolm X's point of view, where like you should be writing songs like Bob Dylan is. If Bob Dylan can write songs about people rising up from oppression, then so should you. Like you should be writing about that. So yeah, I think it's just perfect that you can see sort of both sides, and it's just a brilliant dynamic there. I mean, it's just class. It's just great. Gotta say.
Yeah, and especially because this is a fictional meeting.
Yes.
We
Yeah, I know. I
that
know.
this didn't actually happen. So I mean, that sort of is a testament to the script that they managed to
Hmm.
create this tension, this development, without historical basis. Of course, we know what these men did, but you don't always necessarily know how they felt. And for that to be conveyed seemingly successfully through this script is just so
Yeah,
impressive.
definitely,
And
Cam.
you mentioned previously maybe the developmental neglect of Jim Brown, but also narratively, when we this character is established to us, he goes to meet an old family friend, Mr. Carlton. And I was just watching that scene. I was just waiting for the racist penny to
So was
drop,
I.
because
So
I was
was
like,
I.
this
Yeah.
is the 1960s. This is a guy that has welcomed Jim Brown into his house, and his granddaughter's shaking hands with him. He's shaking hands with him, and I was like, when's this going to go wrong? And
Hmm.
then as soon as he said the N word, I was just like, yep, there it is.
Yeah, I know.
What a horrible person.
That's almost worse than any sort of horror jump scare, in my opinion. Like it's almost worse than that because like you're sort of waiting for anticipation of this guy to say this horrible thing. Because at the start, like you kind of think, oh, he's a nice guy, and he's welcome into his home. Do you want a drink? Those kind of things. Like, he's been a reasonably nice guy, and then just when he comes in, he says, you're not allowed in my house. That is just horrifying. It's just disgusting. And it's just, you know, I kind of feel in the like I was just thinking like surely for that actor that would be quite an awkward scene to film because you'd imagine that's definitely not a view you'd like to hope he doesn't have that those kind of views. I'm sure he doesn't, given that he was cast in this kind of film. But you kind of think like, oh god, that would be such an awkward scene to film, wouldn't it? Just to sort of
Yeah,
say
I
those kind of
mean,
things.
yeah, I feel like there was a similar issue, I think, from Leonardo DiCaprio on Django
Django
Unchained. I
Unchained,
think it
yeah.
was Samuel L. Jackson had to sort of push him to commit, because they're portraying real events. So I mean, they're reflecting the time, and of course, provided that they aren't actually of that mentality, as I suppose it's down to
Yeah.
the discretion of the filmmakers as to whether that's a comfortable
Yeah.
situation to create that image.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the figures that are presented here, I can't speak to the accuracy of the portrayals, but the performances are all so powerful. I was going to ask you, of the four, who do you think is the real standout?
I actually think for me, my favorite, I just got a two separate answers to this. My favorite character in the film was actually Jim Brown, but my favorite performance out of the four was actually the actor who played Muhammad Ali. I think he surprised me the most. All of them are exceptional. I think the actual actor who played Malcolm X is actually British, so his American accent there is spot on.
He
But
looked so British, though.
he
I was
did, didn't
like,
he? He did.
that man is English.
He did, didn't he? I mean, all of them are so good. I mean, we mentioned that scene with Jim Brown there. I think a scene that has a similar effect is when Sam Cooke is sort of performing in the Cabana Hotel, and all these sort of like this, as we were talking about in Emma, like these elitist white people, they just walk out on him, and it's just horrible. It's just absolutely disgusting. And I'm glad sort of Sam gets his moment to shine when later on in the film when he goes in the Tonight Show, but also when he does like the a cappella in the audience where like all his band just leave him and he just has to get this audience just to sort of like clap along with him. It was great. Like every character has a brilliant arc here. Even Jim Brown, like I would think he was great, and there's nothing really wrong about this song. I just think it's just so good. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, I agree with you 100% about the. I definitely agree. Jim Brown was my favorite character, but Eli Gorey is as Muhammad Ali was the standout for me. He had
Amazing.
this sort of cheekiness when he was inside the ring. Where he was really playful, which I imagine is accurate to Muhammad Ali, because I think he was this sort of natural kind of comedian.
Showman, yeah,
I
for
was watching
sure.
an interview with him, and he was talking about his childhood, and everybody was cracking up. Like he was a naturally funny guy. And,
Absolutely.
Eli Gorey just managed to capture this sort of warmth and cheekiness that I was really
Definitely, mate.
drawn to.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Like
I agree with you.
yeah,
Like it's just a fantastic film about great men. And honestly, there isn't much else to say. I really
yeah.
couldn't find anything to criticize in this. I mean, not that we go looking for things to criticize, of course.
Yeah, I know what
We
you mean, mate.
always. I mean, I was going to say we always go into a film optimistic. That's not true.
I
But
know what you mean. I
sometimes
know what you mean.
we're never looking for faults. You never want to
Yes,
watch a bad film unless you know it's bad, having seen it before. You never want to go
of
into a
course,
film and have a bad experience.
of course,
And
mate.
here, I was just blown away.
For sure. And I think the fact that it made it all the more devastating by the fact that two of these four men were actually killed. Obviously Sam Cooke and Malcolm X. But yeah,
Within a year of the events as well.
yeah, I know. But yeah, it's one of those things where like even Malcolm X, I wasn't massively aware of his sort of impact and culture and stuff. So I think having watched this film, I'm gonna go in and a bit more and look a bit more at him. But yeah, Muhammad Ali is just a born showman. Like they call him the greatest for a reason. He was unreal, both in his sport and just as a showman. And I actually think he did music as well, and acting and wrestling. Like he was just a born showman. But yeah, I think of this film. Obviously, we haven't seen I haven't seen Nomadland or other films that are up for or going to be tipped to sort of get nominated for Best Picture. But I think if this film doesn't win Best Picture or at least get nominated, there's something seriously wrong. Like going on there. Like deserves it completely.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know what can top this. I mean, I think if Promising Young Woman won, I would feel that I'd feel fine with that.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's getting snubbed in a lot of awards. For even being nominated. So I'm not even sure that it'll be nominated because the Oscars snubs are infamous. So I
They are
mean,
indeed.
I suppose we'll see. But I think this and Judas and the Black Messiah are probably right up there for big contenders.
Yeah, like I know it definitely made, and given that like with this year with the pandemic and obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement, I think it's important that the Academy has to acknowledge Black cinema like this film. But I just don't want them thinking just because they nominated Black Panther one year, they think that's their sort of their token film that they can use. Like, come on, this film's a great film. It absolutely deserves it. It's done a lot for the community, and it's just a flawless film for me. It's I think it's the best film of the year. Even though we're going to be reading another great one after this, I guess it's definitely the film of 2020 that I've seen certainly. But I mean,
So if you were to
yeah,
give it a rating, what would you go for, Matthew?
it's got to be a 10, Callum. It's got to be a 10. Flawless performances. Regina King is yeah, she's one of the greats, I think, now for me anyway. To think that I first started watching her in like The Big Bang Theory, it's a 10. It's a 10, mate, for sure. What about yourself, man?
You know, I think it would be insulting to give it anything other than 10. I thought it was just perfect.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I thought it was a really great watch, really great watch. And another film which sort of has a lot of the same themes, I suppose, as this film is is it Trial of Chicago 7 or Trial of the Chicago 7? I think I might
Of
have
the
of the Chicago 7, yeah. So I mean this film is kind of like the previous two. It's got an amazing cast for a start, hasn't it? So maybe they got the
Mhm.
best cast out of the three, or at least the most well known.
Yeah, and you know, to sort of talk about that immediately, I suppose, you know, the ensemble is amazing. Who do you think shines best within the film?
Well, I actually forgive me, mate. I actually don't know this actor's name, but it's actually the lead defense lawyer in the film with kind of like the long slick back hair. Do you know
Mark
who I'm talking about?
Rylance.
I mean, I think he's marvelous here. Just and actually the guy who plays the judge, what an asshole.
What a wanker.
I don't think I've ever hated a character more than the judge in all my life. But I think that's a testament to how good the performance was as well. So it's got to be him and the defense lawyer for sure. And JGL is always good. Like I thought he was quite. He doesn't have a lot to do, but he's kind of a lot more subtle, I think, here than his previous roles. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of his previous roles were like sort of brash. You know, obviously you've got your Don Johns and things like that, and you know, and Inception, and obviously The Dark Knight Rises. So a lot of those films, he's kind of like this brash character, but here I think he's really subtle. So it's got to be those three for me. What about yourself, mate?
For me, the big standout was Jeremy Strong as Jerry Rubin. You know, the high school science teacher who was part of the Yippies.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought he was incredible. But you know, for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I was unimpressed.
Really?
And
Okay,
I think the issue
interesting.
here is that he's miscast. You know, immediately seeing you know, him, I thought, you know, he's going to be sympathetic to the Seven just because it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. You know, from the beginning. But, you know, he criticized them as vulgar, and you know that's of course the character saying that. But you know, you're saying that to a guy, you know, who thinks that people who refuse to kill other people don't love their country. You know, if someone's vulgar,
Yeah,
I'd say it's that. But you
yeah.
know, I just feel like he may have been miscast because
I think he's
I think
definitely
he's
miscast, actually. Yeah.
too nice for this role.
And also, like, you couldn't pick a more opposite actor with opposing viewpoints than Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like a guy whose family is like born into politics and things like that. You know, this guy is sort of he's a big sort of motivator for rights and things like that in politics. So I think the fact that he's such a nice guy and he's just plays such a kind of a horrible character as well. It is a little bit miscast, but I think I guess he just wants to show his acting range a little bit as well, I suppose.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of
because of
actors I
course, like,
think would work here.
yeah, you don't want to be boxed in or typecast, but also I genuinely just don't know if he's I don't
You
know
don't
that
need
it
to buy it.
worked.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I bought it. You know, of course, like explore your opportunities. I think he could easily play, you know, a like a serial killer or something. But here, just playing a bit of a dickhead, like I feel like he probably has to commit to, you know, one extreme or the other. Like I don't
yeah.
know if he suits morally gray. You
It's a
know,
good
I was
point.
just thinking Ed Norton
Ed
would be
Norton would be good.
perfect.
Ed Norton would be very good. One thing that kind of surprised me about this film is when I saw the DreamWorks logo, I was like, this is not the kind of film I would expect DreamWorks to kind of be working on. You know what I mean? You think DreamWorks, you
Mm,
think, you know, Shark Tale or Shrek or something. You know what I mean? It's not
yeah.
exactly a DreamWorks film, but yeah. One thing I think about this film, I mean, I'm just going to mention it here. I think this has got the scene of 2020,
Ooh.
and for me, it's when the character of Bobby Seale is gagged and bound in the courtroom, and it's just silence. It's just despicable. Like that's the scene in probably in movie history. I've never been more disgusted in my life. Honestly, mate. Honestly.
Yeah, no, it's I mean it's a horrible sight, you know, because I mean it just, you know, it you know, links to, you know, imagery of, you know, bondage within slavery. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
it's
horrible.
just horrendous and you know, it is indicative of what a horrible person the judge must have been. And you know,
Yeah,
he's a real life guy, you know, we
yeah.
were talking about this off the
Yeah,
podcast
he's a
that, you
real
know,
life dude. Yeah,
you would think in some of these cases, you know, they have a fictionalized judge, you know, so they're not, you know, entirely you know, tearing down someone's character. But this is a real dude, and he's fucking awful, clearly.
yeah, yeah. Like I watched this film with my mom, and like after this film, she was just in tears, mate. She was just bawling her eyes out, so she wasn't.
Yeah.
Understandably, you know, I think what's made this scene all the more powerful is that like that's the last time we see that character. You know what I mean? He's never seen again after that, which is a testament to kind of how serious and how much weight that scene holds. Do you know what I mean? That's why I think it's one of the best scenes of the year, if not the best scene of the year. I mean, yeah, the judge, mate, what a horrible human being. Like, it's not often I'd say those words, but honestly, mate, I'd imagine a lot of this did happen in real life, given that it's a real trial. So dear knows what else was going on that you didn't really hear about in the film. It's horrible. But I mean, fair play to the actor. I'm sure it was a tough role to commit to, and he did a good job of making me dislike him so much,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what he was willing to do in front of a room full of reporters, like what was done, when the jury and
Yes. Yeah, I know,
the
mate.
the witnesses were gone.
Mhm.
But this film, its crux is the protest against the Vietnam War, and at the start, we get a little bit of a newsreel and sort of an establishment of the characters within the film. And I would say very little time is used at the start to establish the group's reasoning for protesting and their intentions for the protest. But honestly, in such a short time, at least to me, I find it very effective in
Yeah.
portraying not only like the horrors of war, but also it allows you to empathize with the fear of being a young man in America in the time.
Definitely. It actually, I suppose, links really well to Muhammad Ali, who I think he famously sort of said, I'm not going to, just on the basis of religious beliefs, I think he didn't want to be drafted. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he must have served a good few years of prison time for that, during the prime of his boxing career as well, I think. So, I mean, it's mad. But yeah, I think having real footage here adds to the class and the authenticity of this. I think the real footage really helps it. And obviously, the cast as well is magnificent. Obviously, like Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, Michael Keaton even is in here for a little bit. It's just a great overall cast, and I think the Eddie Redmayne character is one of the interesting ones because he does a few things in the film where you think, oh, you shouldn't have done that, mate. Do you know what I mean? I suppose, namely when he stands, for the judge. I think that's one scene where, it was, I imagine that'd be a difficult experience for a lot of people in real life if that happened. But I think by the end you do sort of you warm to him. I suppose I did warm to him a little bit when obviously when you read out all the names of those who've passed away. It's kind of a bittersweet ending, I suppose.
Yeah, a speech which would probably take, I estimated, 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely, mate. It'll be a long sort of speech that there, but I mean, it's all these people as well. I was on Wikipedia afterwards. All these people existed in real life. Obviously, it's a real event. So, a lot of them obviously went on to do great things, and sadly, a few of them actually died. I think in the end of this film, they had said that Sacha Baron Cohen's character had committed suicide, which was really sad. But yeah, it's kind of sad that when you realize this kind of horrible things happen in real life, isn't it?
Yeah, and amongst the horrible things that do happen in real life, we've mentioned the judge and his actions, are as we've said, despicable, and it's a shame that you know that this kind of stuff is still going on,
You do,
and
yeah.
it's so unsettling, to think that the people in control of whether someone is innocent or guilty, if there's a level of corruption there, you're just fucked. The next time I murder someone, I'll make sure to leave a note and sign it with someone else's name. Because according to this judge, they'll just take it at its word.
Yeah, I know.
You sign something
literally.
Panthers, and I guess they're guilty.
Yeah, I know, mate. It's ridiculous, and I think the fact that there's also a big conspiracy as to Bobby Seale's friend, who the judge had sort of, for some reason, deemed that he was having legal advice, even though the defense lawyer rightly said like he could have just been pointing out the scores of the Red Sox game. You know what I mean? Like it was no proof of that at all. Like the whole point of the court is not to assume things; it's to evidence things with fact. And here the judge just assumes everything for his own agenda. So it was sickening, mate, to be honest with you. And the fact that it's I suppose it's kind of implied that either he or some other forces had him killed as well. It's kind of just horrible, mate.
Yeah.
And like you said, these kind of things still go on, and it's just yeah. I can't really describe how I'm feeling here. It's one of those films where it's really thought provoking and just makes you think. It's horrible,
Yeah, and a film that we'll be talking about sometime soon, hopefully, Judas and the Black Messiah, is actually, centrally based on the life of Fred Hampton, the character that is killed here. So, I mean, we already know how his story ends, unfortunately, but I'm sure we'll see layers as to the reason behind that within that film.
Yeah.
But clearly, evidenced by this film. Like, a tyrannical judge can change the course of anybody's life,
Yeah, I
and
know. So much
within the
power
legal
there.
system, I just don't understand how anyone can be, a career prosecutor, or a career defense
Yeah.
lawyer. I just think if you had, a certain set of morals, it would have to be case dependent. You can't
Yeah, I know.
defend someone because it's your job, or prosecute someone because it's your job. You should prosecute them because you believe them to be guilty.
Yeah, it's a
If
slippery
if
slope,
you
isn't it?
were if you were to sort of pursue a career in law, what would be your approach there?
Oh, dude, I don't. That's just is the answer there. I think that it's just a slippery slope between. There's no real moral. There's always going to be a gray area there. You know what I mean? There's always sort of there's as I sort of say, like as the old saying goes, like there's three sides every story. There's one person's, the other person's, and there's the truth. And that's one of those things with if you have these kind of judges in charge, you're never going to find out the truth because it's just based on assumption and prejudice and discrimination, racism, the whole nine yards. It's just horrible. And I think I just think this it's just one of those things where it's just a career, like just a legal career just does not interest me whatsoever, just because it's just demoralizing, really, to be honest with you, when there's so much injustice. And I don't expect there never to be injustice. Like it's just human nature, I suppose, like just for that to exist. It's just horrible to think that, but that's just the way the world is. It's gonna, hopefully it gets better. But I just think I just think this film is a really thought-provoking film that makes you think about these kind of cases. And obviously with it being a real life event, it just makes you think, like, how far has society really come on when things like this probably and definitely are still happening. Maybe not to this sort of maybe not to this sort of scale, when it's sort of there's a lot of sort of, I mean, there's no big war for a start, but I think these kind of do things still happen. They 100% do. And I think it's a film that came out at the right time. You know what I mean? That 2020 was definitely the year for this film to come out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we've mentioned the lawyers before, and how Joseph Gordon-Levitt, his character, gets, I mean, I suppose, some sense of, I mean, not redemption necessarily, but maybe he isn't, a piece of shit, in that he at least,
Yeah,
stands with them and honors the, the lives of the Americans that, have been lost since their arrest. But, he says something at the end that just really irked me.
go for it.
This is a paraphrase because I didn't get the exact quote down. But, whenever they're questioning Michael Keaton's character, Ramsey Clark, they they're quizzing him on correspondence that he'd had with the president, and he says that they've removed the jury from the room at this point, and he says something to the effect of, "We can't allow witnesses to make statements that would influence the jury to find the defendants innocent." I mean, that's literally what a trial is
That's
meant to
literally
be.
that's literally what
Why
it's
are you
designed
calling
for.
witnesses then?
Yeah, otherwise, what's the point of having a jury? You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly
Yeah,
what it's there for. JGL,
I'm
or
pretty
is it
sure
what's his
you've been
name,
calling
Schultz or something?
witnesses to convince the jury that they're guilty.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think obviously in this film, in regards to jury, obviously see that there's those jurors who are supportive of the movement of the Chicago Seven. They're just immediately removed from the jury, and these sort of right wing sort of elitist ones are put in their place. And it's heartbreaking when you realize, yeah, these guys did spend, I think, 5 years it was for their sentence, that's a big part of your life. I mean, and like you said, judges have a huge power, probably too much power when you think about it, just to control and change people's lives. And in this case, that's 5 years of their lives are never going to get back, sadly.
I
And
think the judgment was reversed after they
oh, okay,
after, like, I because
that was my mistake. Yeah,
that's what that judge sentenced them with. But then
yeah.
I think upon review they were like, yeah, this judge is
This
this
judge is
this judge does not represent
not
us.
not fit for his position. Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, even just by the moral implications of sentencing 5 years, like it's a lot. It's a big portion of your life, dude.
Yeah,
For doing, for doing, just standing up for what you believe in, I suppose, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge amount more to say about the film. It's just a really thought-provoking watch, really, isn't it? That just makes you consider, like, how dark things can be sometimes in regards to the judicial system, doesn't it? Like, it's horrible.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's a horrifying indictment. And
yeah,
the
for
the
sure.
final thing I just have to say was,
Go for it, mate.
as is standard, with the biopic, that there's notes at the end to sort of remind us of
Yes, yes,
what
yeah.
happened to the real life counterparts. And honestly, that's usually, uplifting. Usually, you see that, they went through all this hardship and then there's positivity in the end. And these ones just made me sad, because of course we found out that, Jerry was killed when he was hit by a taxi outside of the university, when he was jaywalking. And Abby, as you mentioned, was a best-selling author, but killed himself tragically.
Hmm.
And it is just really, really sad to me that that they didn't get to enjoy their lives
I
post this
know.
hardship.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, mate. It's devastating. Like, it really is. I think always another film that had sort of had that technique where it sort of had these what would you call them, like credits, so to speak, of like what each character did with their lives, like is Hacksaw Ridge or like Desmond Doss, and then he went to live on in a pretty happy life. But yeah, it's sort of gotten here that you just think, oh, they didn't really. I mean, they had success here and there. I think Eddie Redmayne's character went on to either work in politics or something like that and got reelected a number of times. But yeah, when you think about it, like a lot of them just had a pretty sad sad end, really, didn't it? And they didn't really deserve that because they all just stood up for what they believed in. So it was sad, mate. I think you're spot on there, man. I think you're spot on.
So, do you have anything further on the film, or would you like to go into ratings?
I don't have anything further, mate. I'd love to hear yours. What would you give it?
So, again, this film, I find it hard to find anything to criticize here. I don't think it hits the same height that One Night in Miami did.
Agreed.
Because I think One Night in Miami is flawless. Here, I can't find anything to criticize, but I don't think I could rate them in the
Missing
same.
something for you, maybe
You
missing
know,
something.
well, in comparison to other films, sure, but in its own right, I don't know whether it's fair to criticize as not being the same or better than other films.
Mhm.
So I would err on 9.5, 10, but I feel like I can't identify it, but maybe there is something missing for me. I love courtroom stuff, but I don't know what it is, but I'm probably gonna bring it down to a 9.5.
That's exactly what I was going to give it as well, mate, in my notes. I think the performances are remarkable, amazing cast, and just a film with a point to prove, I think is what I'd say. It's a really thought-provoking, emotional watch, and yeah, it's fantastic. One of the films of the year as well, a 9.5 for me as well. But yeah, this is a terrific slate of films today, mate. Really, really good shout. And I suppose I'll pass over for you for a little segment of future episode chat to just say what's be coming up on the channel soon.
So in the next few weeks or months, the Conjuring series is coming back with Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. So over the next few months, we'll be covering, that franchise up to that point. So we'll be talking about in future, the Annabelle trilogy, La Llorona, or I think it's the Curse of La Llorona, and the Nun. But as of next week, if that's cool with Matthew, we'll be
Yeah.
talking about the Conjuring 1 and 2. Zack Snyder's Justice League also comes out next week, so
Ooh,
I imagine that'll probably turn into a
tasty.
podcast. It being a 4-hour film,
Yeah.
I'm sure we don't want to kick it in any manner because it was sort of it was a real effort to to bring it out into the public. So I don't think we'll want to criticize it
Mhm.
exactly. But we'll be talking about, in addition to that, hopefully Pieces of a Woman, a Netflix film that came out a few months ago. If we don't get around to it, we don't get around to it. But hopefully
Yeah.
that's what you guys will be seeing next week.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose later on this week we'll hopefully be reviewing either Cherry or Tom and Jerry. That wasn't meant to rhyme. That was just the movies. But yeah, thanks very much for that, mate. I really, really enjoyed this podcast. Really enjoyed it. It wasn't maybe one of our funnier ones, but it was more of a discussion based one again. Not really much we could make humor off, to be honest. But yeah,
Yeah.
great, really great recording with you today, Cam, as well. And yeah, check out this will probably go on our like classic cinema playlist, I'd imagine, and as well as our podcast playlist as well. So yeah, thanks very much today, man. Hope you guys are all safe and healthy. Your family and friends are all safe and well too, guys. Take care and bye bye.
Bye bye.